So,
Perfect. Well, yeah. Oh, sorry. Welcome back to another episode of TRE in Depth with me and Cheda. We're really excited to have a chat about TRE and sexuality today. Um, just for anyone, if this is your first time joining us, this came about, these kind of free webinar series, as a way to kind of connect with TRE providers or TRE lovers kind of around the world, and just provide a safe space to ask questions about the kind of wider scope um, and depth of TRE as a practice. Um, my name is Chandani, and I'm a TRE provider in London. And I will let Cheda introduce himself and begin.
hi everyone, I'm Cheda. Yeah, great to be here, and I'm quite happy with this monthly event. It keeps me going and kind of focus on different events, and um, a lot of people in the past and currently are asking questions, sending emails about particular topics. So I'm trying to cover possible, and I believe that's really useful. To have kind of a sense of community and participation in this. So today it's about TRE and sexuality, or sexuality and TRE, and sexuality is a huge topic, and I really feel to engage with that a little bit more and a little bit more specific. So we come across a lot of issues with sexuality and different needs and so on in our work and life in general. And I found a lot of shifts happening through TRE and connection with other people. So I'm going to kind of share some of my experiences. Please, as always, feel free to communicate, to ask questions, to agree, to disagree, whatever works for you. So let me just clarify before I start going deeper into this what I mean by sexuality, and because today there are a lot of talks about sexuality and about different aspects of that. What I mean by sexuality is it's the sensations, feelings, thoughts, and behaviors that we experience within ourselves towards others. So it's basically more about the physical and emotional sensations that we do have in our body, that we feel aroused and attracted by someone else. So I'm not going into the gender, I'm not going into some other aspects of that is on the table these days. I'm just trying to be, it's complex enough to understand biological, emotional, social and psychological and the relational elements of this. And to complicate even further, I'm not fully equipped for that. So I'm going to refrain from going any further than that. I think that's enough. So that's what I mean by sexuality. Also, what I mean by sexuality, I find sexuality being probably the most fundamental drive behind our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. Often that defines our choices in life, a lot of our behaviors, and so on. I wouldn't necessarily agree that sexuality totally dictates what we do, as Freud would talk about this, and some other researchers and therapists. But I do feel it's a very, very important part. My experience with sexuality is that it's deeply driven by physiological and hormonal shifts that all of us go through. So as children and into teenage years, adolescence, early adulthood, and then later on, with different maturation, we experience different needs of our own sexuality and sexuality of others, and sometimes that can be really nourishing and beautiful, sometimes can be painful and confusing, and so on and so forth. What I found with TRE, that and other practices, body practices, that these practices help us come closer to ourselves, help us come closer to and to deep understanding of who we are, of our needs, of our changes, about our inner dynamics. And once we align with that and become more aware, sexuality also is a part of our life cycle, and life expression also changes. Our needs within sexuality, connection with others also will change, and as my experience with TRE, that TRE helps to balance our nervous system, our whole body systems, also helps to balance expression of sexuality. So some of us who might have had a lower libido or hyperlibido goes into more of a balanced state and aligns with actually expression, and not just hormonal expression, in particular physiological needs, but also about the deeper contexts, also about our emotional connection with others, about our presence, and then the social context. So that's somehow the opening on this discussion, and these are the angles I would like to kind of discuss and share. As a teacher and a practitioner, but also as a naturopath, I always ask my clients, almost always, how's your libido? So for me, important thing when I discuss people's health is how's your sleep pattern, the bowel movements, and how's your libido. These are kind of three most important elements that actually describe a lot of your inner dynamic and your health. So if your libido is healthy, or means that there is a libido present, often that confirms general health of the body is also okay. If we sleep okay, the different hormones and neurotransmitters also will be balanced, and so on. Also, if our bowels and urogenital area, if it's functional as well, that will include also some balance in the system. If some of these elements and systems are out of whack or out of balance, that definitely will include or indicate a particular problem. So I do see libido and sexuality as an expression of health. And when I see when people are overly stressed, overly tired, exhausted, they don't have time, for their own sexuality, and that indicates, some imbalance, and then engaging with different practices or different awareness, or how your lifestyle can be shifted, that can make a serious difference in your own general well-being and health. So with TRE, what I found, that all of these elements improve. So your sleep improves, your bowels would improve, your general functionality will improve, and often libido improves as well. And there are a number of pathways, number of reasons why this happens, and I'm going to speculate on some, and I'm going to share some as well here. So one of the elements that I find very balancing, in particular as libido and sexuality goes, it's that often we are in a state of sympathetic arousal and we don't rest enough. So we are on the go all the time, and then you do exhaust your resources. And for some some people might drive with hypersexuality. They might just carry on sympathetically being engaged and engaging daily in sexual activity, and that's if that works for them, that's fine. But usually that will follow with the crash. Well, other people, they simply don't have time to relax and be with themselves, and that can affect us hormonally and biochemically, and clearly, as some of us progress in the age, all of us, that definitely will affect how we are in the world, particularly with our sexuality. So as you would do TRE, for example, or some other body practice, you will become more relaxed. So your balance between your sympathetic and parasympathetic state will become more balanced, and that will improve your sexuality potentially. The other thing is that some of us have lived through particular traumas, sexual traumas as well, or as a children or as an adult. And by that I don't mean necessarily just as a sexual violence but also emotional violence that has been that some of us as a young boys or young girls were being insulted verbally and then emotionally as well. And we grew up with some of these kind of a memory of particular event or a number of events that will prevent us being fully open and relaxed and engaged in intimate connection with another human being. And often that's below our conscious awareness. We don't actually think, oh, something happened 15 years ago, when I was a kid. I had an erection and someone, scolded me for that, or I said something and, I got emotionally or verbally castrated. That often happens, and people kind of laugh that off. But a lot of these kind of small events can accumulate to a particular perception or constellation with our brain and nervous system that doesn't allow us to be fully relaxed and engaged with another human being. The sense of deeper trust in intimacy, it's not always easy to surrender to. Depends on our family of origin. If sexuality, sex, intimacy wasn't something nurtured or nourished or openly discussed, if there was some shame or guilt around that clearly will spill into our own sensation. And it can go both ways. It can go into hypersexuality, where you go into extremes, or can be really playing with your dorsal vagal state, when you go into the shutdown at the sense of becoming more intimate with others. So just to give you some ideas that all of these, and there is more obviously, but some of these elements of trauma, it doesn't need to be a big T, but some of the accumulated traumas can affect our perception and our volition and trust into intimacy or surrender to someone else, or being open to someone else. Because when you're intimately engaged with another human being, you are fairly vulnerable and fairly open, and some of us have difficulty with that. So I find with TRE you become more aware of some of these patterns and with other work, and that really helps us become to communicate better, to understand ourselves better, to communicate to the other your needs and your potentially your desires or your fears or etc. etc. So that's another element. And then also third element that often we come across, it's also potentially related to some early childhood patterning and later on development in teenage and adolescent years, when you become more kind of sexually curious and interested and so on. And if there wasn't healthy relationship to your own genitalia and your own needs or curiosity, what often would happen that you would close down, not necessarily emotionally, but also physically. That your whole posture will be kind of a posture of shutting down, crossing your legs, not really being engaged, and that will affect your pelvic floor. That will affect the pelvis and the inner structures of your system. And I work a lot with that. I mean, in TRE, what I found incredibly powerful when you actually start to release from inside some of these patterns that can be there, most of the time invisible. But some of these patterns, once they become softer, because they have to be softened before they can reorganize, then you can actually have on a tissue level a greater fluidity, greater freedom. And once you have greater fluidity and greater freedom within a tissue, then also biochemically and potentially emotionally, you might become more fluid and available as well. So these are kind of three main elements that I experience in my work and in my own personal experience regarding sexuality and connection with myself. So I would like to just pause here to hear any comments, any questions, anything, and then we can carry on further. Anyone would like to say something?
Hi, Cheda. I'd like to say something. First of all, great to see you again. It's been a long time, and I was getting the emails, and this topic particularly is kind of very relevant for me in my life. Understanding trauma and sexuality. So when I saw this Zoom meeting, I was like, okay, I want to be part of this. I think after doing the TRE training, after practicing TRE, something that I noticed is that a lot of my sexual states, and perhaps maybe even all of them, are trauma states, and I never really understood that. And I think I'm on a journey now to unpack why that is and what that means and how that happens. Because I know what a trauma state is. I know when I'm hyper aroused. I know when I'm hypo aroused. But after doing TRE and really going into it deeply, I noticed, oh, there's a correlation here. When I'm having sex, I'm actually experiencing a type of trauma, and I don't understand why. There's kind of a question mark there for me. Yeah.
Great, lovely, just nice and straight away. I like that. So I think it's so important because often some of the sexual trauma that are stored in men are not really being discussed enough. Clearly, most dominant part takes because majority of sexual violence, just to generalize, is towards women, and that's unfortunate. But as we can see, a lot of men suffer from some of these elements. And my experience with that is related to early childhood, to maturing, growing up. Some of these remarks in puberty about the size of your penis potentially, about your performance, about early connections with sexuality, how well do you perform, what do you know about sexuality. So if culturally they can be related, they can be related with the family of origin, they can be related with the small group of friends, people that we grew up with. And I think, unfortunately, for most part, none of us had adequate sexual education. And pornography takes a terrible rap as well. But some of us grew up on pornography. That's where we learned certain things, and we can
Sure, yeah.
and so on. And that caused different perspective on sexuality as well, and potentially some other traumatic responses. But the absence of adequate education, some of these things can be actually helpful. The other thing, some of us have been in partnership, in marriages, and some of these marriages were also highly traumatic. And some of the trauma from the divorce and imbalance between the partner in a relationship, it's very traumatic as well for men and women as well. So some of that also can carry a particular residue, a particular memory of sense of intimacy or pleasure that I'm not maybe worthy of, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not adequate enough, or could be a range of experiences that can provoke that trauma state, as you mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be some of my observation, and yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being direct and
Sure.
brave about it.
Yeah, no problem. I guess my follow-on question, and my last question on this for me would be, how does one know or determine if they were sexually abused as a child? Because that's something that I have considered.
Difficult one to say. I mean, and a lot of people go to particular therapists and practices, and there can be a memory of something coming up, or I've seen people doing particular psychedelic trips, and they have some visions of and things like that. Just being very gently, because memory and this kind of a consolidation of your hippocampus and other areas responsible for the memory consolidation in the brain, implicit or explicit, are more complex. We don't fully understand. There could be a memory of something, but that does not necessarily equate to sexual abuse. And I had a number of clients, and they struggled tremendously because they had a particular image during some of the sessions with psychedelics or without, within a particular realm, and then they potentially ruined the extremely supportive relationship with their close ones and so on. And so it is very delicate also not to negate if something has happened, but how you go about actually engaging and understanding and healing above all.
Right.
Because often we want to find the guilty party and point the finger why this happened and this was wrong. And clearly that is always wrong. There is never the right reason. But to me, it's more important how much that can be a constructive recovery from that can help us actually not go into the trauma state. Because the sexuality should be pleasurable state. The whole cascade of hormonal cascade moves us towards that kind of a pleasure state that's potentially also life form comes out of that as well, which is a divine act in a way. And I'm not always that each sexual act should be a divine act, it can be just sexual act, could be just simple release. And I think I would like to talk about this a little bit more. So I hope I answered to some extent. I don't have exact full about the sexual abuse and then how that will clearly affects people, some and less, but also sometimes doesn't necessarily have to be a sexual abuse, can be some of the smaller traumatic events that build up into the kind of sense of difficulty in being intimate and sexually active.
Sure. Thank you, Cheda. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to share something, if it's okay. For me, it's like two things that come up. One thing is indeed after a trauma in childhood that I realized, but very much later on in my life, that there is really the part in sexuality where you can surrender and really let go, that I thought I was there, but I actually, when I became more aware of my body, that I felt as if I always was keeping myself up a bit, as if I could never really like really sink or something. So I connect that also to trauma, in the sense that, yeah, it's like a state where I don't feel completely safe, not within myself, but also not with others. So something that I realized by becoming more aware of myself while having sex with a partner, that I really noticed, like I'm really like holding myself, and yeah, that was something, a first thing that I that comes up to my mind about this topic.
Great. This is so important what you just shared, because I think the purpose of life really is to bring unconscious into conscious. And I think that huge shift, most people really walk unconsciously. But for you to understand that, that's so kind of sophisticatedly delicate as well, to feel that and to, have that awareness. And, this is great, because once you meet yourself as you are, then you can change something.
Mm-hmm.
I often say that people want to change something. Yeah, I want to be more available in life or do this, but you really don't never meet yourself as you are. But respecting, yeah, there is maybe some hyper alertness, some constriction, or and then you allow that, because for whatever reason there is body intelligence, and that protected you until it serves you no longer, and then there is a process to kind of soften and move from that state into more appropriate state now. So yeah, moving from that and communicating to
Yes.
to your partner, it's really, really fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I found also, that masturbation and self-pleasure, that often it's ridiculed and really for both male and female as well, and not really encouraged. But what we're finding, that people really don't understand their own genitalia, their own arousal levels, their own capacity, their own limitations, and I think it's also reaching orgasm for both male and female. It's fundamentally important for the healthy, for the general healthy state of the body. Because what we're seeing even recently, some of the serious illnesses come from lack of expression, no orgasms. That there is actually epidemic of prostate cancers recently as well, and you can see some of these. Joe Rogan said beautiful. He talked about quiet desperation that so many particular men live in, and we do it kind of, be okay. We just need to keep going. But the quiet desperation, lack of fulfillment and satisfaction, it's killing us, and for a lot of women as well. And so just being aware of some of these states that often we go through, and we do not understand, actually, because touching myself and understanding my own needs, it's never been encouraged and never supported. But then we do expect another person, our partner, to know exactly what we want, and we don't even know what we want. So I mean, there is also this paradox, and without
Yes.
all of these elements are part of our becoming more alive and more conscious and more aware. And it doesn't always equate, I'm more aware and I'm just going to have phenomenal sex life and I'm going to have multiple orgasms and I'm going to be the happiest person alive. It just, I don't know, maybe it might work for some people. For some people it doesn't work, you have more fulfilling life and sex life, but I think it is multifaceted as well. This thing.
Yes, and the second thing I would like to share is like something that's maybe like affecting in both ways, like from doing TRE and the movements I notice in my body, I really feel that it started to be connected with how I move if I get an orgasm, like I don't know, release is also much more bigger or physically if I let it happen. And it's, yeah, I find it actually nice also to discover how that works together in both ways. And then same when I do TRE sometimes, that I notice like, okay, my body is getting free in a different way in that direction as well. So it's like contagious or something.
Wow, wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely expansion there. So
Yeah.
I think there are a number of messages in the chat, which I don't, if Chandani, if you can just any interesting comments and questions. But there's one thing I want to share as well. Years ago, we had the TRE gathering in Croatia, and I met this guy who was very bubbly, very dynamic, and he was in his 70s. And he was asking me what do you do, and I do this, and what do you do? Oh, I do TRE plus. He says, oh, what's TRE plus? And he goes, with my wife, we do TRE together, and then we have sex afterwards. And it's just really, it's like amazing. And I really remember to this day, TRE plus, what a great expression. Because clearly you will relax, you will connect deeper, what the Baselli talks about, intrapersonal relationship with yourself. It helps that interpersonal relationship with another. And that goes into sexuality as well. So just, I don't know the guy's name, but I really wanted to reconnect with him and see how's it going with Theory Plus, so we can learn more from him. Anyway, Chandani.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Holly mentioned that she runs an online self-pleasure circle for that very reason. You want to say any more about that, Holly? No? I'm curious, even if you write in the chat, if you do the streaming included as part of that circle. And I don't know your name, Lenovo. I'm guessing that's your phone, the name of your phone. So that prostate cancer and prostate conditions are also known amongst disease.
Can you repeat that again, please?
That prostate cancer and prostate conditions are also known as amongst disease.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that, I worked last year with this other therapist, and we work quite strongly. He also teaches pelvic work, and I'll be doing in September pelvic workshop, psoas and pelvis within TRE context, and we're going to be going through some of these elements of tissue and organs and structures. But what his observation is that he's another teacher with the myofascial release, and that lack of ejaculation, for example, in men causes problems with the range of issues, particularly with the prostate. That prostate shrinks, becomes malignant and dysfunctional as well. So, in general, I'll come to that in a minute. That's the movement and the fluidity within the pelvis and reawakening of all the organs within our pelvis and our whole body to its balanced state, that will provide healthy system overall. But if there is if there is constriction, lack of expression, lack of function, they clearly cannot be good long term. So, any other And great on Hollywood, good, great. I love that. You know, that I never heard of that before. So this is really self-pleasure circles. Fantastic.
Hi there. Could I make a comment or two?
Yeah.
Firstly, I'm incredibly happy that you're doing this because I think it's something that I've missed completely in TRE formation and ongoing education. And obviously, as everybody who provides TRE will have done, there are many examples of coming across people's experiences, their comments, their vulnerabilities as clients. And I think it goes right back to the very butterfly position, which is a very vulnerable position. And then the lifting of the hips, especially. For me particularly, that's been a challenge with male clients because the prominence then of the penis when you raise your hips is greater. So, and the very vulnerability of, opening the knees out as well. For a woman, there's recognition of perhaps childbirth and also obviously abuse if there has been some. So I think it's fabulous that you're doing this, and I would like to know. I'd like to discuss more. So if there is anything that I can, follow up, that would be fabulous because it can't all be covered today, I'm quite sure. So thank you. And what else?
Thank you. Yeah, everything you said there. It is, our daily encounters. We face people's pelvises every day. Some of us. And that's why it's important to really be inclusive from all levels of experience. Because some of us will have different filters. Some of us had the difficulty, maybe childhood or sexual abuse. Will see that through the filters of that, or someone who had, great pleasure and, so, and the more you understand, the more you become neutral and more you become available to your client as well. So regardless of our personal story that we carry, we can be neutral to a client. But equally, the more aware you become, then you can also shift your own perception of reality, because your own experiences should not limit us. I always said it's a terrible shame if any difficult experience that we had in life freezes us in that particular moment and kind of sends us to the life sentence, so I cannot express or enjoy my life because particular events, So I'm really keen on working on that. And I've seen so many hundreds of people transform their lives in some of these experiences. It doesn't negate that the experience happened, but it does not allow that experience to condition and affect the rest of my life in a negative way. So yeah, I mean, it is a difficult subject. I think our culture also, it doesn't. We all came from that act, all of us. Not a single one came in a different way, really. And none of us were brought by some bad or by I don't know some what was the conception that all of the stuff. All of that was part of the deeper process between unity of our parents. So, and I think, it is our responsibility to shift that and be more available and more equipped to face different people's reality and our own reality. And notice, yeah, we are vulnerable, but also that's a powerful, the butterfly position. It is a vulnerable, but it's also a powerful position. That's where life comes from. Also, that's when people receive, a lot of pleasure and gifts as well. That's the position that the fetus actually spends considerable amount of time. And I taught this in my last workshop on primitive reflexes. And that very position affects our dorsal vagal system as well. So there are many kind of levels within this, and hence my insistence of our engaging, obviously not being pushed into something that we're not ready or have no resources for. But we need to engage with the deeper reality of potential expression of life that gives life and pleasure as well, and gives some pain too.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is pain there, and that's that's okay too, but it doesn't need to be a chronic pain.
Yeah. And I would also like to give a shout out for those people for whom it's been incredibly liberating. And I've seen, have a better sex life as a result of having encountered TRE. So there is that as well.
Exactly. And that's also, I want to bring some of these examples, and I'm just going to give you a few examples. So when you have, how you put it, you did put it beautifully there, the protuberance of a penis or something like that, lovely. And some of us men have an issue with that. I don't in a healing session. I don't necessarily enjoy having erection, and sometimes in theory it happens that I get the erection or other men get the erection, but I feel a little bit uncomfortable, and depends on the person around me. I can feel really uncomfortable about that. So so. But what we've seen with some men who had a heart condition, they had erectile dysfunction, and I can't tell you how debilitating that condition is for men. Erectile dysfunction probably is one of the worst things that can happen to men, and it's really under the radar for so many people. And there are a number of reasons which I don't have time to go into why that happens with men, and it is multiple causes are there. But we also seen some great recoveries. We had women who were having a spontaneous orgasm without even touching themselves during the TRE workshop. Twice, actually, I was present on those workshops. And as a matter of fact, some of them shared it as well, and entire group was like, cherished it. All 30 of us were like, yeah, there were applause across the room. So, we genuinely kind of celebrate that because it is a high expression of life as well. So yes, can be a transformation. Oh gosh, this is going fast. Any other comments or questions? Chandani, anything in the chat?
No, it's just interesting because that's definitely been something that comes up with when the pelvis relaxes, that can be very, very pleasurable. And it was very early on, actually, when I was doing case studies and things like that. A friend of mine was saying, like, it feels really pleasurable, but like that's, holding that is also quite difficult when you're in a session. So it's such a great topic to talk about, because it's such a normal, like as you said at the beginning, it's such a normal expression of health, our sexuality. And so it's great to kind of balance out both maybe coming to TRE because of trauma or sexual trauma, but also because we want to feel more fluidity and pleasure and aliveness, and actually seeing that as a very like healthy functioning body, because there's a lot of shame around that, and it's definitely difficult if that comes up in a session with a practitioner, because it came up. I was talking to particularly like massage therapists. It happens quite often that like a male client might get an erection, and some people will not deal with that very well at all. And so it's a very interesting topic. I was going to ask, I don't know how much we've got, just 10 minutes left, but to talk a bit about what happens with TRE and the pelvis, just briefly. because I think that's just important to understand this topic.
Sure. Yeah, it is a really big part of this, and I'm going to go deeper in pelvis and psoas workshop in September. But just to say on this topic, when a client gets erection, please understand that often that doesn't mean the client is attracted to you. You know, that also has to be some neutrality. It might be, that might happen as well, that, you know, but often the client might just have a deeper sense of relaxation, deeper sense of release, and deeper sense of kind of coming into himself as well. So, and vice versa for female as well. You know, a lot of female might get aroused as well in some of that, and that's normal too as well. And you don't necessarily, oh, well, maybe something is wrong with me. You know, there is nothing wrong with you. Okay, so this whole aspect of shame that is related to our culture, it's very, very detrimental, and the more we work with that, we need to develop that sense of neutrality and appreciation for what is. And obviously, you need to have your own boundary and ability to be with. But that's why we need more discussion on this. So we normalize this and have different tools and ability to engage with some of these things rather than shut down or blame and shame someone else or ourselves. So as far as pelvis goes, it's a beautiful dynamic that the position of our psoas, or psoai, which is bilateral, connects the part of your spine with abdominal and pelvic cavity. And when you tremor, the psoas system, rather than just the muscle, two of them, they're connected with our sympathetic and parasympathetic trunk of the nervous system. And as you tremor, you do release and relax entire system in your pelvis and your abdomen as well. And why that's beneficial? It's also beneficial because in shock and trauma, our tissue becomes rigid, becomes tight, becomes also dehydrated as well. So, for example, in pelvis, you have about between 40 and 50 muscles, but 70% of all structures in pelvis are actually myofascial structures. So they're not necessarily just muscular structures, but they are also myofascial structures, which means they have softer tissues, elastin fibers that are fed by the more fluidity in the system. And if that fluidity is not present, there is more rigidity. I mean, there is a big discussion on prolapses, that on vaginal dryness, on erectile dysfunction. All of that is related to the rigidity of the pelvis and some of this parasympathetic trunk that actually arrives there. So as you do TRE of some of these practices, you are actually reorganizing, you're softening all the tissues in that whole area there. So it's kind of internal massage. So also, I think sexual activity or masturbation or all of that is very beneficial because it does stimulate also in a functional way all these other structures. That's why the lubrication or lubrification, the movement, the blood flow into those areas, arousal, all of that really stimulates internally the number of structures in the body. And if that's absent, so there is no stimulus. All the structures become dehydrated and non-functional, and they decline, or what's the better word? Degrade is not the best word. They become less functional. So, and the safest way that I found, it's through TRE, because you are basically massaging internally all of these structures. And that's why it's so beneficial and so gratifying to use that. You can use many other things, but that's briefly why I insist on this work. And atrophy, exactly. It's a lot of atrophy. Women after giving childbirth often, can go through difficulties. After sexual assault, a lot of that happens, atrophy and rigidity and all of this. So that's why we need to re-engage with some of these areas timely and wisely as well. That also is important. Yeah, so that's briefly I would mention this multiple effect of TRE for the pelvic health and general. The number of ligaments within the pelvis, and there are 3 pelvic floors, and we cover all of that in a workshop. And next month I will, because this is such a big subject, we'll talk about the TRE and hormonal balance, which again is related to some of these areas, pelvic areas and so on, and just to go deeper into importance and such a huge benefit for most people, when we do TRE and some of the body work, how our hormones, how our sexuality, how our functionality in general can improves significantly. And so that's yeah, briefly what I can say now.
Great. There's still a couple of questions here. So Miriam's asking, I do have a question about TRE in different practices, for example, Tantra. What I saw that in this work, it was much more about total expression and sometimes catharsis, whilst in TRE, we use more of a method of dosing. And just if you had any comments on that.
Sure. I mean, yeah, TRE, it's kind of a global bodywork system, let's say, but it can be specifically also, you can focus on specific emotion, on specific body part and so on. Yeah, some of the Tantra people use TRE as well, or they might call it differently, but it is vibration, the tremor, the involuntary movements, the contraction, the shuddering, the pulsation, all of that is involuntary expression. That's where health is, that's where life is coming from. So if you're stimulating that and you're working with that, it's a safe and profoundly beneficial way to work with. And then obviously with other practices, Tantra, with other elements, you can go deeper. With TRE plus, with our friend, then you explore. And it's beautiful if you have a partner who is willing to go there deeper, the partner who is curious, who is cherishing you and cherishing themselves. And that's kind of the beautiful connection there. And that intrapersonal connection with oneself and then interpersonal relation with others, that is divine, actually. So,
and I think one of the things that I found is with being able to, if you can do a practice like with TRE kind of long term, and you are more in touch with how it is to slow down, the subtleties that are happening in the body, being able to regulate and self-regulate the emotions and the physical sensations, then the more kind of total expression and kind of cathartic work can also feel, you can really be present with that. Whereas like most people doing cathartic work, they get lost in it. And so they're not, they might be dissociating or very activated. So it's not, so I think having a balance is quite, and TRE really provides a model for that, in a progressive way. So I found that after, doing TRE for a period of time, I could be with quite deep releases. Whereas if that had been my first experience of a kind of cathartic thing, that would have been way, way too much for me. So yeah, just to add. And then last question here, Cheda, I think.
Well, just to add that it's a really important comment there that you made, this self-regulation. This is how you prime and you develop your whole capacity, your nervous system. And that can be very functional for sexuality as well. How you edging yourself and another person, so you don't just, this passionate connection and after 15 seconds, the end of the story there, but you can be really regulating, engaging deeper, and that is communication, this way, the whole body experience, contact, not just kind of a penetrative connection, but kind of the deeper connection as well. And, so I think there is a lot to be said about self-regulation in this element as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And just slowing down can be so confronting. And so if you can work with that in a TRE practice, you can bring that into your, sex life as well. So another question is, what can cause traumatic dissociation during sex? So for me, it seems to be difficult to remain embodied during sex.
Could be, old pattern of not being with the body's a sense of shame or guilt or, dissociation from, one way to counter that is to be witnessed. To be seen and looked and communicating and eye contact while you are sexually connected with someone else. To be touched as well, to be really held in that. That is, otherwise you go off on your own, in your own world, but just being brought back and reconnect with another and with yourself, and that. The challenge is finding a partner who can actually facilitate that for you both. So it's easier said than done, and but nonetheless, if there is no capacity with the partner, or at least on your own, I think just being able to explore oneself and really stay with that and stay with the range of inner emotions and so on, because also reaching orgasm, it's not necessarily the ultimate goal. It doesn't have to be. It can be pleasurable, but also just being in a body and experiencing that intimacy on the different levels. It can be highly gratifying.
Amazing. And then Holly was just saying it's really great talk today, and that she's gonna try to take some of the shaking practice into her next self-pleasure circle and with clients. Then Saskia was just asking when the pelvis and psoas workshop will take place, and that's 28th to 29th of September. It's in London and online, right, Cheda?
London online. But we also will be together. We'll do another talk on this similar topic. Will be end of August.
28th of August.
28th, yeah.
6 p.m. Another Wednesday. So TRE and hormones. Yeah.
So that is related to this topic as well, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into that and why some of that difficulties is explored. And they are both things connected, but there was no space to do all of that, today. So, and it is kind of prelude to going deeper in that workshop in September. But yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Cheda, and thank you all for joining us and for your questions. And if there's any topics that you want us to cover, do send them in. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Really wholehearted, brave, adults like, it's great to reconnect with all. And guys, stay in touch, and we'll see you soon.